Ethan Carter leaned against the mahogany desk in his late father's study, the warm glow of the setting sun casting long shadows across the room. It had been weeks since the funeral, yet the ache of loss still clung to him like a heavy coat. Ethan had always admired his father, Dr. William Carter, a renowned archaeologist who had dedicated his life to unearthing the secrets of ancient civilizations. As Ethan sifted through the books and artifacts scattered across the desk, his hand brushed against a leather-bound journal. It was worn, its corners frayed, and the once bright color faded to a dull brown. Curiosity piqued, he opened the journal, revealing delicate sketches and meticulous notes in his father's neat handwriting. Lycian tombs, Myra, hidden chamber, Ethan murmured as he flipped through the pages. The sketches depicted towering cliffs adorned with intricately carved tombs. Beside them, cryptic phrases were scrawled. The door is hidden where the sun meets the shadow, and not all treasures are meant to be found. His heart quickened. Ethan remembered his father speaking of the Lycian tombs, a remarkable relic of ancient Turkey. But the mention of a hidden chamber was new and tantalizing. "What did you leave for me, Dad?" Ethan whispered, his fingers tracing the inked lines. A knock at the door startled him. His cousin Leo poked his head inside, a broad grin spread across his face. "Still rummaging through the old man's things? Or did you finally find the secret to immortality in there?" "Close," Ethan replied, holding up the journal. "Take a look at this." Leo stepped inside, his eyes scanning the pages. "The Lycian tombs. Sounds like an adventure waiting to happen." "It's more than that," Ethan said, his voice steady with determination. "This could be one of Dad's last unsolved mysteries. I think he wanted me to find it, and I'm going to finish what he started." Leo's grin widened. "Well, you're not going without me. You need someone to handle the heavy lifting, and let's face it, you're not exactly built for scaling cliffs." Ethan rolled his eyes but couldn't suppress a smile. Leo's enthusiasm was contagious. The next day, after hours of researching flights and logistics, the two cousins boarded a plane to Turkey. Ethan carried the journal in his backpack, its weight a constant reminder of the journey ahead. Upon arriving in the coastal town of Myra, the pair marveled at the sight of the Lycian tombs. The cliffs rose majestically, their carved facades glowing golden in the afternoon sun. Local vendors sold trinkets and postcards, and the air buzzed with the chatter of tourists. Ethan and Leo approached a small museum at the edge of the town. There, they met Daria Kaya, a local archaeologist recommended by one of Ethan's university professors. Daria was in her early 30s, with sharp eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Her firm handshake and confident demeanor instantly set Ethan at ease. "I've read about your father's work," Daria said after Ethan explained his mission. "If his notes are accurate, you might be onto something significant. But the Lycian tombs are more than just beautiful. They're dangerous. Landslides, unstable paths, and other risks." "Other risks?" Leo asked, raising an eyebrow. Daria shrugged. "Superstitions. Locals say the tombs are protected by a guardian spirit. People claim to hear whispers at night, warning them to stay away. Of course, there's no scientific proof of that. Good thing I'm more of a man of logic than superstition," Ethan said, though he couldn't shake the unease in her tone. Daria smiled faintly. "Logic is useful, but it won't stop a landslide. If you're serious about this, you'll need a guide and some luck." As the trio began planning their expedition into the cliffs, Ethan felt a mix of excitement and trepidation. He couldn't shake the feeling that his father's journal held more than just a historical mystery. It was a key to something greater, and he was determined to unlock its secrets, no matter the cost. The town of Myra was unlike anything Ethan had ever seen. The streets buzzed with life, a blend of old-world charm and modern tourism. Stone-paved alleys twisted between whitewashed buildings adorned with vibrant bougainvillea. The air smelled of roasted chestnuts, fresh sea breeze, and the faint tang of ancient stone. Ethan, Leo, and Daria stepped off the local minibus, their bags slung over their shoulders. They stood at the edge of town, where the cliffs of Myra rose in the distance, their ancient Lycian tombs visible even from here. The carved facades stood like sentinels, their solemn beauty undeniable. "Wow," Leo breathed, shading his eyes to get a better look. "That's something else. Imagine carving those with nothing but chisels." Daria nodded, her voice calm but reverent. The Lycians believed these tombs were stairways to the heavens. They built them high on the cliffs to bring their dead closer to the gods. Ethan adjusted his backpack, the journal pressed securely inside. He felt a mix of awe and anticipation. His father's sketches didn't do the tombs justice. Seeing them in person was overwhelming, a mix of history and mystery that set his pulse racing. They made their way toward the tombs, passing market stalls where vendors hawked colorful textiles, hand-carved jewelry, and tiny replicas of the Lycian tombs. As they stopped to buy water, an old merchant eyed Ethan's journal sticking out of his bag. "Looking for something special?" the merchant asked in accented English, his voice low and raspy. Ethan hesitated but gave a polite nod. "Just exploring the history of the tombs." The merchant leaned closer, his expression darkening. "Not all history should be disturbed. The tombs keep secrets that were meant to stay hidden. Many have gone in search of treasure and returned with nothing, or not returned at all." Leo, ever the skeptic, chuckled. "Let me guess, you've got a protective amulet for sale?" The merchant's gaze didn't waver. "No amulet can protect against what you're chasing." He gestured toward the cliffs. "The tombs are not empty, they are watched by the Koruyuku, the guardian spirit. Beware of your curiosity." Ethan exchanged a glance with Daria, who seemed unfazed. "Thanks for the warning," she said, pulling Ethan along. "You'll find that every town with ancient ruins has its share of legends." As they approached the base of the cliffs, Ethan couldn't shake the merchant's words. His rational mind told him it was just a ploy to spook tourists. But the unease lingered. They reached a fenced-off area where Daria flashed her archaeologist credentials to gain access. Once inside, they stood in awe of the tombs towering above them, carved into the sheer rock face. Weathered carvings of lions and eagles adorned the entrances, their once sharp features softened by time. Ethan pulled out the journal and flipped to a page with a sketch of a particular tomb. His father's notes described a hidden chamber near its base, accessible only at certain times of the day. "The sun meets the shadow," Ethan muttered, tracing the lines with his finger. "What's that?" Leo asked, peering over his shoulder. "It's a clue," Ethan said, excitement building. "Dad wrote that the chamber is only visible when the sun is at the right angle. We need to figure out when and where that happens." Daria pointed toward the cliffs, where the afternoon sun cast sharp shadows across the carvings. "Then we'd better start observing. The Lycians were precise with their architecture. If your father was right, the answer is somewhere in the details." As they studied the tombs, Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He glanced back toward the market but saw only distant figures and the cliff's imposing shadows. "Everything okay?" Daria asked, noticing his distraction. Ethan nodded, forcing a smile. "Yeah, just, excited to get started." But deep down, he wondered if the merchant's warning wasn't just superstition after all. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the cliffs of Myra. Ethan stood at the base of the towering tombs, clutching his father's journal. The sketch he studied matched the tomb in front of them, an ornate facade with a carving of a lion at its peak. "This is it," Ethan said, his voice filled with determination. "The journal says there's a hidden path nearby. We just have to find it." Leo sighed, already wiping sweat from his brow. Of course, the secret entrance isn't labeled. Why can't ancient civilizations make things easy? Daria smirked, her hands on her hips. If they did, it wouldn't still be a secret. The trio began their search, examining every crevice and shadow. Ethan noticed a faint pattern of symbols etched into the rock, nearly invisible beneath layers of dirt and moss. He brushed them clean with his hand, revealing a series of arrows pointing downward. "Look," he called out. "These markings. My father mentioned them. They're guides to the entrance." Following the arrows, the group found themselves at a narrow opening hidden by a large boulder. Daria inspected it carefully. This wasn't just hidden. It was deliberately sealed off. It's ancient, but the mechanism to move it might still work. With some effort and a few grunts from Leo, they managed to push the boulder aside, revealing a dark, jagged tunnel leading into the cliffs. "After you," Leo said, gesturing dramatically. "Coward," Daria teased, pulling a flashlight from her bag and stepping in first. The air inside was cool and damp, carrying the faint smell of earth and stone. The walls of the tunnel were rough, with occasional carvings of symbols Ethan recognized from the journal. "It's just like Dad described," Ethan murmured, his voice echoing slightly. The tunnel soon widened into a labyrinth of interconnected paths, some barely large enough to crawl through. The trio moved cautiously, navigating the maze with the help of the journal's cryptic notes. Ethan's academic training proved invaluable as he deciphered symbols and inscriptions that hinted at the correct paths. "Stay close," Daria warned. "It's easy to get lost in places like this." As if on cue, a loud crack echoed through the labyrinth. The ground trembled, and loose rocks tumbled from the ceiling. "Move!" Ethan shouted, pulling Leo out of the way just as a section of the ceiling collapsed behind them. "That was close," Leo said, panting. "Can we agree not to trigger ancient traps again?" "It wasn't a trap," Daria said, scanning the debris. "The structure is unstable, we have to be careful." But Ethan wasn't so sure. Something about the collapse felt intentional, as if triggered by an unseen hand. His suspicions grew when they stumbled upon fresh footprints in the dust, prints that didn't belong to any of them. "Do you see that?" Ethan whispered, pointing to the marks. Leo's brow furrowed. "We're not alone, are we?" Daria's expression hardened. "It seems not. Whoever it is, they're ahead of us, and judging by these footprints, they're in a hurry." Tension thickened as they pressed on, the tunnels growing narrower and more complex. At one point, they reached a dead end where an intricate carving of a sun and crescent moon adorned the wall. "This is it," Ethan said, his fingers tracing the design. "It's a riddle." Beneath the carving was an inscription in ancient Lycian, which Ethan translated aloud. "Only when light and shadow meet can the path be revealed." Daria shone her flashlight on the carving, but nothing happened. Ethan shook his head. "It's not artificial light. It has to be sunlight. We need to align this with the sun's position outside." "How?" Leo asked, glancing around. "We're in the middle of a mountain." Ethan examined the wall more closely, finding a small hole near the top. "This must channel light into the labyrinth. If we adjust the angle..." With careful maneuvering and teamwork, they managed to direct sunlight through the hole. The beam struck the carving, and with a low rumble, part of the wall slid aside, revealing another tunnel. As they stepped through, Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. Faint scuff marks on the floor indicated that their unseen companion had already passed through. "Whoever's here doesn't want us following them," Daria said grimly. "They're not the only ones with determination," Ethan replied, gripping the journal tighter. The path ahead promised more challenges, but Ethan was more resolved than ever. Whatever secrets lay within these cliffs, he was determined to uncover them, even if it meant facing the shadows stalking their every move. The air grew colder as the trio stepped into a vast chamber deep within the labyrinth. The room was circular, with walls etched in ornate carvings depicting Lycian gods, battles, and funerary rites. At the center stood a massive stone door, its surface adorned with intricate patterns of the sun, stars, and a crescent moon. "This is it," Ethan said, awe filling his voice. "The hidden chamber." Leo whistled softly. "It's like something out of a movie. Let's hope we don't trigger a booby trap." Daria approached the door, her flashlight sweeping over the carvings. "This door isn't just decorative, it's a puzzle. Look here, Ethan." She pointed to a series of symbols at the base. Ethan knelt to inspect them. His father's journal had mentioned similar symbols, but their arrangement was unfamiliar. "Give me a moment," he said, flipping through the journal. As Ethan worked, a faint sound of footsteps echoed behind them. Before they could react, a voice cut through the silence. "Impressive work, Mr. Carter. Your father would be proud." The trio turned to see a man emerge from the shadows. He was tall and wiry, dressed in dark clothing that blended into the cavern. His face was sharp and his eyes gleamed with a dangerous intensity. "Who are you?" Ethan demanded, stepping protectively in front of Daria. The man smirked. "Let's just say I'm an enthusiast of ancient treasures. You can call me Marcus, and I must thank you. You've saved me a great deal of time finding this place." "You've been following us," Daria said, her voice cold. "Observing," Marcus corrected. "But enough pleasantries. Open the door and we can discuss how to share what lies beyond." "Share?" Leo said, crossing his arms. "Yeah, right. I've seen enough movies to know how this ends." Marcus's smile faded. "Don't test me, boy. Open the door, or I'll make sure you regret it." He pulled a small, menacing blade from his belt, its edge glinting in the faint light. Ethan hesitated, his mind racing. "If you harm us, you'll never figure out the puzzle. This isn't just a door. It's a test." As if responding to his words, the carvings on the stone door began to glow faintly, the light spreading across the patterns like flowing water. The chamber trembled, and a deep resonant voice filled the air. "Who dares to disturb the rest of the Ancient Ones?" A translucent figure emerged from the door itself, a spectral guardian with flowing robes and glowing eyes. The group froze, the room falling deathly silent except for the low hum of the apparition's presence. Marcus stumbled back, his confidence faltering. What is that?" The guardian's gaze swept over them, lingering on Ethan. "Your intentions will determine your fate. Speak, traveler. Why have you come to this sacred place?" Ethan took a deep breath, stepping forward despite Leo's whispered protests. "I came to honor my father's work. He spent his life studying history to preserve it, not exploit it. I want to continue his mission." The guardian seemed to consider his words, its form shifting like smoke. "Many have sought these secrets for selfish gain. Prove your worth by answering this. What is the treasure of the ancients that cannot be stolen?" Ethan's heart pounded. His mind raced through his father's teachings. "It's knowledge," he said finally, his voice steady. "True treasure is the wisdom of the past, meant to be shared, not taken." The guardian's light grew brighter. "You speak truth. Yet one final test remains." Visions filled the chamber, scenes of Ethan's father teaching him about ancient cultures, of tombs desecrated by greed, of relics destroyed by time. Ethan felt a deep ache as if the weight of history itself pressed upon him. "Would you leave this place empty-handed to protect its secrets?" the guardian asked, its voice a whisper now. Ethan nodded, his resolve firm. "If it means preserving history, I would." The guardian turned to Marcus, its eyes blazing. "And you, thief, your greed condemns you." Before Marcus could flee, the chamber shook violently, and the apparition surged toward him. With a scream, Marcus dropped his blade and vanished into the shadows, leaving the trio alone. The light dimmed and the door creaked open, revealing a chamber filled not with gold, but with ancient scrolls and artifacts. Ethan's breath caught. "This isn't treasure," Daria said, her voice soft with wonder. "It's a library." Ethan smiled. "It's more than that. It's a legacy." The group began carefully documenting the contents, knowing they had found something far greater than riches. The chamber seemed to hold its breath as Ethan stood before the spectral guardian, its glowing eyes fixed on him. The air thrummed with an unseen power, and the carvings on the stone door pulsed like a heartbeat. Ethan swallowed hard, his voice steady but sincere. "The true treasure isn't gold or jewels. It's knowledge, the stories of those who came before us, their wisdom and achievements. That's what my father believed, and it's why I'm here, to preserve history, not to exploit it." The guardian remained silent for a long moment, its form shifting like mist. Then, a low hum filled the chamber, and the glowing light on the door intensified. "You have answered wisely," the guardian intoned. "Only those who respect the past may walk forward." With a deep rumbling sound, the massive stone door began to slide open, revealing a hidden chamber beyond. Ethan, Daria, and Leo shielded their eyes as light poured out, illuminating the treasures within. Instead of piles of gold or glittering jewels, the room was filled with ancient scrolls, clay tablets, and delicate artifacts. Wooden shelves lined the walls, holding rows of neatly preserved Lycian texts. The air was thick with the smell of old parchment and stone. This is incredible," Daria whispered, stepping forward in awe. "These texts could rewrite what we know about Lycian history." Ethan felt a wave of emotion wash over him. His father had always believed that the greatest treasures were intangible, the knowledge and stories that connected humanity to its roots. And here it was, preserved through centuries, waiting to be discovered. But the moment of wonder was cut short. Marcus, who had been standing frozen in disbelief, suddenly lunged toward the chamber. "This can't be all there is," he shouted, his voice desperate. "Where's the treasure?" "The gold? There has to be more." "Stop!" Daria yelled, but Marcus ignored her, his hands scrambling to pry open a stone chest near the center of the room. The Guardian reappeared, its form blazing brighter than before. "You have been warned. Those who seek with greed shall face the consequences." Before anyone could react, the chamber trembled violently. Stones began to fall from the ceiling, and a deafening crack echoed through the air. Marcus screamed as the chest emitted a blinding light, and the floor beneath him gave way, swallowing him into darkness. "Run!" Daria shouted, grabbing Ethan's arm. The trio bolted back through the labyrinth, the ground shaking beneath their feet. Dust filled the air, and the sound of crumbling rock roared around them. Ethan clutched the journal tightly, his heart pounding as they retraced their steps. They barely made it out as the entrance collapsed behind them, sealing the hidden chamber and Marcus inside forever. Outside, the sun had dipped low on the horizon, casting the cliffs in a fiery glow. Ethan sank to the ground, gasping for breath, as Leo and Daria leaned against the rocks beside him. "Well," Leo said between gulps of air. "That was intense." Ethan looked down at the journal in his hands, now smudged with dirt, but still intact. "We did it," he said softly. "We preserved the knowledge, and we honored my father's legacy." Daria placed a hand on his shoulder. "Your father would be proud, Ethan. What we've uncovered here is priceless, not for its value, but for its meaning." As they made their way back to town, Ethan felt a newfound sense of purpose. His father's work wasn't just a career, it was a mission to protect the stories that defined humanity. And now, Ethan was ready to carry that mission forward. When Ethan returned home weeks later, he placed the journal on his desk, alongside a new notebook he had started. On the first page, he wrote a single line: "To preserve history is to honor those who came before us."